Our goals for today's session are to help you learn strategies for approaching local government, political bodies, and politicians, and why their engagement is important to the sustainability of your coalition. We want you to learn how to engage political partners and champions is one of the key words there. Learn the importance of letters of support, how to obtain them, and understand policy change. I should note that because I am reading the slides in part because not everybody has this PowerPoint, is at their computer with PowerPoint in front of them. Just a brief review of what is sustainability. And really what it comes down to is everything a program needs to keep it going over time. Our work is too important. Your work, our work, is too important to stop. Our communities need what we're doing desperately. And that's all it comes down to. So we've got to figure out how to keep this going. And I've seen a lot of great work. How do we keep it going? And how to expand it? Why sustainability? Well, because our communities need the help. Really, what it comes down to is it means having the time, talent, and treasure to achieve broad objectives. And there's a few other notes on here, but I want to stress that, the time, talent, and treasure. And of those, treasure can be sometimes overly focused on. Do not underestimate the power of time and talent. And that is something that our communities have. We may not always have a lot of treasure, but we often have time, and we certainly have talent. So think about how you can use that time and talent. And that goes back also to the first module on partnerships. Sustaining political relationships is about the relationships with local governments will sustain changes to the built environment. Relationships with political bodies will sustain policy changes, and that is something really important, is changing policy and making better policy. Relationships with individual politicians can result in letters of support and funding opportunities. Those are just brief examples. Partnerships was our first module, and we'll just review real quick. Partnerships are the connection between program and community. It's about key stakeholders from a variety of discipline and communication with community leaders. And then strong collaborative partnerships with various agencies is key. You see community leaders, that is partly what we're talking about today, politicians. Why political support? Well, politicians decide how government uses its resources, and coalitions need resources to be sustainable. Key to healthier communities is shaping better health-related policies. Policies made or influenced by politicians. You know, a lot of policies have unintended consequences, like sidewalks. Many of our communities don't have sidewalks. Well, that contributes directly to obesity and diabetes because people are exercising less. So we want people thinking about that. We want, as policies made, we want health of our communities to be an important part of the thinking of the policies and the developing of the policies. Now, politicians want to help their communities. They're natural partners for coalition. And I want to stop here and say no cynicism. No, I don't say that with cynicism. I can be a cynic. We need to put the cynicism aside. We need to put the sarcasm aside. We all can make politician jokes. Many of us, or just about all of us, have a that jerk story about a politician. And you know what? Put it aside and forget it, because the work we're doing is too important. Our children, our communities, our neighbors are too important to let a few cynical and personal biases get in the way, and a bad personal experience or two get in the way of improving lives. And that's what we're doing. And that's what you're doing, is improving lives. So, you know, politicians, you want to work with them. I want to step back here and talk about a minute about advocacy versus lobbying, because this comes up and you'll see that a lot of grants prohibit lobbying. The difference between advocacy and lobbying is often defined as the difference between advocating for general policy and being paid, and there is an emphasis on paid, to lobby for specific votes on bills or for specific candidates. We want coalitions to educate volunteers who work to change the laws. And that's the volunteers work to change the laws, not necessarily the coalitions directly. There is a reading that will be in the toolkit as we continue developing it. If you have more questions, let me know. And I will say in short, this gets complicated. You're better erring on the side of caution, and when in doubt, do not do it. Like I said, most grants prohibit spending money on lobbying. I'll add in a disclaimer also here. We are not lawyers. More importantly, we are not your lawyer. Nothing we say should be considered legal advice, and laws on this vary by state. They vary by the body you're working with. But do not let this scare you away. You are doing good things. Things our community needs. So this is just something to be aware in the back of your mind about. And if you have questions and want more discussion of this topic, please let us know. We'd be happy to do a module just on this, or we can point you in the direction of many more resources. Part of this is also understanding what your coalition can do and what you can do as an individual citizen. As a citizen, you can make campaign contributions, you can endorse a candidate, you can write an editorial, you can conduct partisan political activities. As a coalition, you cannot do any of the above. That is part of being a nonprofit. It is also part of getting along with everybody. You don't want enemies. So when in doubt, make it clear when you're acting on behalf of the coalition, when you're acting on behalf only of yourself. One easy way to do this is to say, you know, I work with Healthy Wise County, but I'm here on behalf of myself, asking you to support this bill. So you need to make that distinction sometimes, and it can be a crucial distinction. You know, and it also comes back to that whole paid thing. You can take, you know, fill your time card out so you're off the clock when you're actually asking or talking. Just again, something to think about. Don't let it intimidate you. You want to reach out to politicians early in your process of developing a coalition. And with that, they often are busy. They often know of funding opportunities that are in process of being created. And they're often looking at policies 1, 2, 3, 5 years down the road. Not just what is the government doing now, but what is the government planning to do. So you want to have a relationship with them before you ask them for money. Nobody just wants to come up and say, hey, give me some money right at the first meeting. They know you want support. They know what you're doing is important. You know, you want them to know what you're doing is important, and they know you want support. But part of this is just developing a relationship so you have credibility, and when you come to ask for $5,000, $10,000, $100,000, whatever, they know it's legit. And then that gets into the earlier the better, because getting funding via legislation takes time. As I mentioned, they're looking down the road. State budgets in Virginia and Kentucky are written 2 years at a time. In other states, they may be written 1 year at a time or 2 years at a time. You know, it takes time to get funding via legislation. Often, I'd say 2 years on average, and that's if you've already got the ball rolling. If you're starting from scratch, it can take 3 to 5 years to get big funding. So let's go from the earlier the better to setting up the meeting with politicians. Politicians are a lot easier to meet with in the off-season. That is when their legislative body is not in session. When the State House or the State Senate's in session, that's just a much harder time to meet with them often. So develop the relationship in the off-season when you can meet them at their local office, when you may meet them if they have their own business or work part-time, full-time somewhere. You can often meet them out in the community and have more time and less pressure. They often run late. The more powerful, the less likely they are to be on time. If you're meeting with the governor, you may end up waiting 2 or 3 hours. It just is what it is. The reason this is important is schedule multiple visits accordingly. If you're going to visit with 3 or 4 people in a day, really space them out. Give them time so that you are not delayed by one person being late. You don't have to cut that meeting off. So, another way to set up the meeting is to invite the politician, their staff, and families to all of your activities. You may end up meeting them at your walk, at your Turtle Challenge, at your faith-based health ministry training. That can be just as valuable as sitting down with them in the office. In fact, it can be more valuable sometimes because they see what you're doing and they see the community engaged with you. So part of setting up the meeting is evaluating your access. Who knows the political person and how well? Before you get into some of that, who is really making the policies you want to influence? You need to step back and say, who is it the federal government? Is it the state government? Is it an administrative office? Who is really making the policies you want to influence? And then go from there. You also want to look at who is likely to be a champion for your cause. We'll go over this very specifically, but who is going to stand up for your cause and tell your story? You want to discuss this with your coalition. Get everybody's input. Get different ideas. Discuss it with them. Everybody has different strengths. Use your partner worksheets from last module to figure out how you can gain access, and those will help you gain access. You want involvement from all parties and factions. I cannot stress enough, your work is too important to be a political football. If you're only seen as a Democratic issue or a Republican issue or a Tea Party issue or a one town versus the other town issue, at some point you're going to lose. It may benefit you a little now, but you will lose in the long run. And what we're doing is too important. The health of our community, our neighbors, our children, our families are too important to be subject to partisan political whims. Now, part of not being a political football is developing a politically diverse group of supporters by tailoring your message to their interests. This also comes back to the partner worksheets. What is their interest? If you know somebody has an interest in mental health, talk about the involvement of diabetes and mental health. There are links there. There are specific issues there that you can mention. If you know somebody is big into transportation and roads, talk about building sidewalks and how that makes people healthier. Come to them. Bring the mountain to them. Now, campaign donors are not the only politically connected, and politically connected people are not the only ones with access. Also consider spouses, family members, neighbors, co-workers, pastors. One classic strategy for recruiting politicians is to recruit, or for getting influence and access, is to recruit a spouse to be on your board or involved with your coalition. I've done it. Most people have, a lot of organizations have done it. It's classic strategy because, after all, who better to bend their ear than their spouse saying, honey, the how was your day, honey conversation goes, well, we were working on this and I learned this and what can we do to help? I think we all know some of the most powerful influences in our lives come from our spouses and our family members. One thing is to never underestimate the power of staff members. They can make something happen or not, and you may never know. Their fingerprints may never be on it. I don't mean to sound condescending, but assume they have the power to, because often they do. What to expect at the meeting? Bring easy to understand materials. Visuals are good. Bring extra copies. There's some samples within the accompanying documents, and Barbie will talk a little more about this in her case study that we're going to have here in just a couple minutes. Explain this in terms they are interested in. And one of the terms is every elected official wants to save money. Be prepared for almost anything. You never know what's going to happen. Be prepared for almost anything. Don't get rattled if it doesn't go like you planned, or if something odd happens, it can and probably will. So just be aware of that, be comfortable with that. I want you to ask for something and try to get a commitment. It doesn't have to be funding necessarily. You can ask for support for something. You can ask them to consider something next time they're dealing with X, Y, Z. Ask for something. That way you're creating a two-way street and an engagement. Now, when you meet with them, there's some key facts to highlight, and they are your county health rankings. And this website is great, countyhealthrankings.org. It is from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. It is very, very credible. I mean, they're the gold standard in health data right now for foundations. There's some samples from this also within the accompanying documents, and this information is going to be updated this month likely, or very soon. So go to it, get the county health rankings for the politicians region, get the number and percent of people with diabetes, at risk for diabetes, obesity rates, and then change. That is one of the most important tools you can do is to show change. So, because unfortunately the changes are almost always for the worse right now. Obesity rates and diabetes rates are going up, and that is just a tragedy. Part of that also relates to current and projected diabetes and obesity costs. And you can get some of this information from the American Diabetes Association. You can get it from a number of different sources. When you think about the costs, think about the costs of the healthcare system, but also do not overlook that it's not just paying money out. A lot of times diabetes and health issues keep money from coming in. So you have reduced productivity, lost tax income, and increased costs. So you're getting less coming into the bank account, the checking account, and you're having more going out. That's not good. So compare the cost of treatment and the cost of prevention, and use the phrase return on investment specifically. That's a phrase from business. Government now uses the language of business. Show them how investing $5 now in treatment, or $5 million now in prevention, can return $100 million in lowering the costs of treatment and reducing the productivity and tax income loss. That sounds like a great deal. You show me how I can put $5 in now and save $100 million 10 years down the road, you're going to get their attention. After the meeting, after you've given them key facts and you've left them with some papers, follow up. Ask how you should follow up with them. Ask if you can put them on your mailing list. Again, follow up. Always send a handwritten thank you note. If you need to be quick about things, an email's fine, but follow it up with a handwritten thank you note. Doesn't have to be fancy. Just thank you for taking the time to see me. I appreciate your commitment, or talking with you, your concern about ... And follow up again. You've opened the door for the relationship. You started it. You put the foundation down. Now build on it. The role of the champion. You need a champion. Your champion will support the cause enough to tell your story of the problem of diabetes in your community, in our community, in their community. They're going to tell the story. They're going to be that public voice for what is going on. And from there, once you get them telling your story, and that's who you want to look for, somebody that gets it and can tell your story. So the role of the champion. One purpose of your meetings are to find and develop a champion. Who's really interested? Who gets this? Who already says, I've got a family member that this affects. Who's going that extra mile to try and help you? Really focus on developing that relationship. Now, ideally, your champion will be a member of the group responsible for creating the policy you want. So if you want a school board to act, you want a school board member as your champion. So that's just, they're going to have the influence, and they're going to be able to get it done much better. Let the champion determine the policy, the strategy to get the policy changed. They know what's going on. They know if you're better off waiting 2 months and not putting your energy in now and getting it changed. They know, let them determine the policy. How to work with a champion. This is really about, the champion will often dictate the relationship. Your role will usually be as a support person. That's the power dynamic of the relationship. Now, one challenge can be keeping them on the right track and making sure they keep telling your story and not drifting off or embellishing or focusing on other things. Part of that, one way to do that is spend as much time preparing the champion as you can. Take the time, whatever time they will give you. Focus on a few key points. Less is more. 1 page is better than 100 pages. Focus on those key points, those talking points, and let them then take credit if they choose to. Some want to, some don't. Let them be in control, and that's a key part of making this work and developing that relationship. Lessons from our case studies. And this is from my own experience, a recent experience, and based on a couple other things. Next time, we will have a champion. We're working with somebody who's trying to get something done with a school board. And we didn't have a champion on the school board. So what that meant was, we didn't necessarily know the opposition. That was early in the process. The champion can help you figure out who's going to be against you. And then you can go to them and get them to at least hear them out and mollify them and, make them not so vocal. Get them kind of say, okay, I understand, I'm against it, but you don't want them to fight you too much. The champion will often know that and help you address, when you have opposition, address it early in the process. Address it sooner than later. When you have a champion like a school board member putting forward a motion and a cause, others need a reason to vote against the project. Now, without a champion, they need a reason to vote for the project. And this is really the difference between somebody don't say no versus saying yes. It's a lot easier. It's hard sometimes to convince people to say yes. Why should they? But you just want them to not say no. So they'll go along with the champion because they want to get things done, or they don't want to upset each other. What reason do they have to vote against it if somebody wants it, if one of their colleagues wants it? A champion will make the process faster and easier. They can tell you where to put the time, when to put the time involved, when to be involved. That can save you months worth of legwork, and say, okay, we're just going to wait till this 2 months from now, and we're going to put it in here and this. Again, that's part of letting them determine the process. It will make it faster. It will make it easier. You're not showing up to 10 months of meetings in a row if they can say, we'll just take care of that in June. Show up then with this, this, and this. So I'd like to ask Barbie Ellington to come online and talk a little bit about her case study and her experience from Diabetes Day. Barbie?
Okay. Hi, Stuart. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I had the opportunity to attend the Kentucky Diabetes Day at the Capitol in February, and this was a program that is set up yearly by the Kentucky Diabetes Network. And they've been doing this for several years, and so they are very organized, and they really have the program set up very nicely. We went early in the morning, and we received our legislator packets and also our packets. And then we also had a training on how to speak to your legislator, which was very informative. We also had several speakers that spoke about their own journey in having diabetes, which, gave us purpose when we went to speak to the legislators. And I'm not sure, Stuart, when you're going to put up the handouts for the on what we gave to the legislators, but we had an information piece that showed the rate of diabetes in every county. So every legislator could look at their counties and see what the rate of diabetes was in their county. They received a copy of that. They also received a copy of the diabetes statistics in the whole state, and that showed a map that showed Kentucky and the diabetes rates. And in that, it showed that almost all of Kentucky is above the national average. And there was a map from, I think, 2004 that showed what the rate was at that time. And at that time, we weren't too bad. And then it showed the rate in 2010, which was just 6 years later. And it shows how much we have progressed, how many more diabetics we have now than we did in 2004. So we had appointments set up with the different legislators, and for the most part, 2 people went to see each one. If we didn't have appointments with someone, someone went ahead and took by a packet and left it at that legislator's office. So every single senator and representative in Kentucky received a packet.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Barbie. We appreciate your input. And those documents were mailed out, were emailed out as part of the accompanying thing. I will pull them up here and show people as soon as we, at the end of this.
The legislators were very interested. You were talking about time. Of course, we went during when the legislature was in session. Of course, that's when they're all there, and that was the best time for everybody to receive information. And but in some cases, we may have gotten 5 minutes with somebody. And in another case, one of the legislators, one of the representatives, spent more than an hour with us. But they were all very attentive. The information pieces were very educational and very easy to present to them. They could easily see that diabetes was a problem. They also saw that there was had been a decline in diabetes education, so the materials were key in doing the presentation.
Yeah, and I found that having materials that you can get quickly, the visuals are key because they can look at a change and understand it within a few seconds, and that is just important, really important in your 5 minutes. Oh, wait, this is a problem. I get it. I need to pay attention to this. There's a reason. We have those documents attached, and that's where that website is great. I believe most of the information came from the countyhealthrankings.org website.
Yes, I know that they did receive a printout of the counties, all of the counties, and it showed the rankings, and that is where those rankings came from.
Great. Great. Well, thank you, Barbie. Appreciate your input, and your advice just goes to show be prepared for anything. So, you know, it was great that you had somebody call in budget people and talk about funding, and that's where they're natural allies for you. They're natural partners. So, thank you, Barbie. We're going to move on to the next slide, unless you have anything else you'd like to add.
Just didn't know if there was anything I hadn't covered that you would like to go over.
You've done great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, following our case studies, let's go on to some tools for engagement. One, again, is ongoing communication. This showed up last time as well. Communication is key to what you're doing. So letters of support and proclamations, and we have an assignment again that we'd really appreciate it if you would do. Ongoing communication, get their permission to send them newsletters, press releases, meeting minutes, invitations to all events. and flyers, anything else you share with the public. Also, ask them to share those with the public. They often have, great networks and already of people, that's a big part of their business really, is getting information out. So if they can share that in some of their newsletters, in their own newsletters, that's wonderful. Take advantage of that. That's another way they can help you. So, and when you invite them, again, invite families, invite staff. Also send these things to staff if you can. Another thing is occasionally call or check in with them. One of the best things you can do is to stop by and say hi when you're not asking for money. With anybody you're asking for money, stop by and say, how are things going? Anything I can do to help you? So, be aware of that and step in there and just, call and check in, again, especially in the off season when it's slower, and then maybe shoot them a quick email during session. But part of that's also following up with them. Letters of support. We've talked about this a little bit. They are an easy feel-good step. There's very little actual commitment for them to write a letter of support. Actually, usually it's sign it, because you want to write it out exactly like you want it. They will most likely cut and paste what you send them. Write out that email exactly. Do not say insert name here, because that may show up in the letter they sign and hand you. I've had it happen. It's kind of embarrassing. So really write it out, and if they want to change it, they will. Some of them will. A lot of times they won't. You're trying to make it as easy as possible. Again, usually you're not getting them to commit to a lot. It's just saying we think this is great and we support your funding it. So when you do that, there's a couple samples for letters of support within the accompanying documents that we've emailed you. Those are great samples. You can find other samples online. If you need more samples, let us know, but usually they just need to be fairly simple. So, follow up with a thank you note. Let them know that the letter was successful, or at the very least appreciated. So you can follow up with a thank you note. That's great. And some politicians you may get to know well enough that they just end up giving you a stack of their letterhead and saying, well, print it out and just bring it to me when you need me to sign it. I've had that happen. It makes things easier on everybody if you just keep some county letterhead, and then when you need them to sign it, you print it out and take it to them, and they say, sure, here, next. Similar to a letter of support is a proclamation or a resolution. A proclamation is usually a ceremonial document, and they're ceremonial, usually. They're signed by the governing executive, and issued for public awareness, charitable events, arts, cultural celebrations, other special honors. And a resolution is basically the same, except it's passed by the legislative body. So a county board of supervisors might pass the resolution, whereas a proclamation might be signed by the judge executive or the mayor, and the city council passes the resolution. Those words get used interchangeably a lot of time too, so don't get too hung up on whether it's a resolution or a proclamation. Again, this is an easy feel-good step. So you're just, getting them to declare it National Diabetes Day or month. You're getting them to say, thank you, we appreciate the excellent work done by this. We recognize that diabetes is a problem in our community and appreciate the work and support the work of the coalition. Something like that. They can be very simple. There are some documents, some samples within the documents. Also, the CDC has a couple more samples on their website. There are other samples out there. Usually, if you're wanting one from a governor, in my searches, they just show up on their websites. There's an easy email form to ask the governor for a proclamation. Like I said, it's an easy feel-good step. By the way, if you do ask the governor for a proclamation, often they have rules on how it can be used without their permission, etc. Again, bring it to them exactly as it should be passed. Then follow up with a thank you note. An assignment. we would really appreciate it if you would share one letter of support or proclamation that you've been successful with, and let us know why you were successful so we can share it with everybody else. That will, give us, again, more samples and more stories so we can help each other and continue learning from each other. And that's really what a lot of this is about, is trying to help people learn from each other. You will be sharing them through our Facebook page or through other documents, also in our toolkit that we are creating for our meetings and for our big meeting in May 2015. Please email that assignment to Regina Tipton, who introduced us or introduced me earlier, or your local facilitator, really any of our AppFill staff, me, any of us. We'll make sure it gets in the right hands. We're going to have a link to this recording, to a recording of this webinar on the Facebook page. It's also on our YouTube page. So if you want to go back and review this or share it with somebody else, just share our YouTube page. Please let me know what questions you have. If you have questions, suggestions, please let us know. We want to get better at doing these. We want these to meet your needs. They're not here. I'm not here just to hear myself talk. So how can we help you? Send those to me, Stuart Burrell at appfill.com, Regina, any of our facilitators, any of our staff. I do want to take a minute to note there will be a survey emailed to you in 1 to 2 weeks. We usually use SurveyMonkey tool many of us are familiar with and have filled out surveys for before. These are reviewed by Ohio University, who is our evaluator, and the CDC. It will really help us if you fill these out. The next, coming soon to a webinar near you on April 27th, is Roadmap for Success, Module number 3, Coalition Capacity. What can you do? And we want you to learn how to evaluate your coalition's strengths, opportunities, and challenges. This will be hosted by Mandy Hart and myself, and we're looking forward to chatting with you on that. I am going to go ahead and bring up those documents that Barbie mentioned, but please chime in with any questions or comments.
Stuart, this is Regina. I just wanted to let everybody note that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the county rankings, should be updated here probably in the next week or so. I know that's one of the major indicators with our county coalition that we check and make sure it was, in all honesty, the catalyst for the creation of the Scioto County Health Coalition that we work with here.
Here I've just pulled up those are great, and that's a real easy way to quantify things and to show them where they stand, because nobody wants to be last or near last. It shows that you can do better. It puts the problem in perspective that we can be better, we can be healthier. It's not just some artificial goal. Why is XYZ county doing better than we are? Why is this region doing better than that region? So it also lets them go and tell their other legislators what a problem it is and how it affects their community and why they need to pay attention to it. Here is the flyer for diabetes advocacy, and so here is the map that she was talking about. I guarantee you every politician, or just about anybody in Kentucky, has been here a little while, can find their county in 3 seconds, even with all 120 counties. Let's look at that rate. One county above 11.2% to 85 counties. Out of 120 counties, I think I tried to figure out how many of them got better, or at least not worse, and the number was very, very few. So this is the kind of printout that makes a difference. It's easy to understand. An estimated $2 billion is spent on diabetes every year in Kentucky. Everybody's struggling to balance budgets. That number gets attention. $2 billion is quite a lot of money, Kentucky Medicaid, this is the state government and federal government, $237 million loan on diabetes costs in 2010, and the rates are going up, so the costs are going up. That's where a lot of our state budget is going and going to be going unless we do something about it now. And we understand this. We want everyone else to understand this.
Yes, Stuart, that's one of the things that we were talking about when we went in and talked to each one of the legislators, was the fact that the budget is really tight and that we were advocating for them not to cut diabetes money. And in one case, one of the legislators actually talked about adding money. So by going in and showing him these things, he said, yes, diabetes education is a priority. We need to get more people out in the counties, more certified diabetes educators out into the counties. So he could look at this, and he was already, as you say, a champion. But he looked at this and said, we really need to take action. So just going in to see him may have prompted him to go ahead and do something.
And also, when you already have a champion, you're giving them ammunition to share with, and information to share and convince their fellow legislators. He can go to them and say, look, we need to find $5 million for this. We need to find money for this because it's going to benefit us. And he can then explain it to them quickly in a way that they get it. The costs associated with diabetes are huge. So, many of us have seen, amputations, heart attacks, stroke, hospitalizations, how many emergency room visits, and what can we do to prevent this, and then also to prevent the complications. So and sometimes we're just desperately trying to get them not to cut, but we always want to focus, try to do more than just not cut. Show them how it is an investment. Every state budget is tight. Every state budget, frankly, is always tight. So, here's another number to show. That can make it real simple. Number of counties getting diabetes education. If the funds are cut, it's going to go from 46 to 20, from 103, or almost all of them, to 46, or less than half of them, about a third of them. Oh, that's going to ring true, and it's probably going to be more in the rural counties that we tend to work in. That's just my experience. So, health departments providing diabetes education, that's going to, 40%. So, again, this is part of also asking for something very specific. And this is a really nicely designed piece. So, use it as an example, or use it, copy it. I'm going to pop back to our PowerPoint. Is there any other questions or comments? Well, I hope you all enjoyed this. Please let us know what we can do to help, and if you have any questions or comments in the future, please chime in and let us know. If you want to know more about the difference between advocacy and lobbying, again, just let us know. We're happy to help you figure it out. And, what do you want to help with? We appreciate the work you're doing. We understand how valuable it is, and we want to support the wonderful things that we've seen happening, and really your concern for our community, and we're grateful for that. Thank you.